Hi, everybody. Great to have you along for NewsNite here on Friday, February 11th. Tonight, we'll talk about the latest in the Kelley Williams-Bolar case. Al Sharpton's coming to town. The state of the county and some consolidation that could save all of us some money, and the baker's dozen who want to be Akron's next police chief. Those stories next on NewsNite. Kelley Williams-Bolar case continues to be a hot topic across the nation, if not so much in Akron. Big developments this week, so let's get to it. Glad to have along Ed Esposito here this week from WAKR, and also great to welcome freelance journalist and contributor Jody Miller. Al Sharpton is coming to town. That's big news. The governor wants the parole board to weigh in. That's big news. And now we're hearing more from Kelley Williams-Bolar herself that she probably didn't think was going to come out to the public at all. Which is the biggest element this week?
Boy, you know, this week I'd say it's the governor kind of punting to the parole board and pushing it over there and asking them to make a decision substantively. But just in terms of style, without a doubt, the tapes from the jailhouse phone calls, conversations with her father and her mother are just kind of eye-opening and will reinforce in some people's minds her guilt. And in other people's minds, I think it'll seem like everybody's picking on her. Because
9 hours of tapes released in the last 24 hours by the prosecutor's office. In summary, what kinds of things did we learn?
We learned that she and her dad talked about the kind of money that they would get from the networks for doing the TV talk shows, that she joked around about being single and, you know, maybe she could date an NBA player. Michelle Obama and Oprah's names came up as potentially being interested in the story. Even to the point of who would play who in movie roles. I do think in listening to some of the tapes, I don't think it casts either father or daughter in a positive light. But especially if I were the father, I'd be concerned about it. It's important to note that the prosecutor did withhold some of the conversations from these jailhouse conversations because the father was also in court, and he's progressing on his theft charges, not because of the school district, but because of job and family
And when we
services.
hear her say that this was hell for 9 days, but then, Jody, we hear this is the way she talked for all these hours on the phone, what do you take away from that?
Well, I think that she was just biding her time. She was serving the sentence, obviously, but I think she was planning ahead. I was struck that the tapes that I listened to, I did hear her talk about hair, her daughter's hair, taking care of the dog. But it just didn't sound like she was in much pain, much misery. She sounded just fine. I think Ed is right. I think that for those who see Kelley Williams-Bolar as a victim, they will think this poor woman. But you have to understand, when somebody goes into a jail situation, they know that any telephone conversations they have are going to be taped.
Well, it's posted. I don't know if there's a constant reminder about that.
Well, I'm
attorney, I'm sure, told her.
Yes, I am assuming that they had to have known. But I was struck by the rather flippant type of attitude. There wasn't an awful lot of remorse by any means, shape, or form expressed. And I do think that if you take the time to listen to these, you will get a different kind of a picture of what in fact went on and what happened.
But you know, to be fair about this, I mean, you know, there is an attitude of, you know, you might take a snarky or a sarcastic tone, you might buoy yourself, you know, in bad circumstances. You know, I'm sure when you're talking to your kids, for example, I mean, you know, you can tell that's very emotional. You know, and she tells her daughters that she'll be home soon. I do think it's off-putting to hear, you know, talk about the money and other stuff like that. But some of that is, you know, have you ever visited somebody in a hospital bed and you joke around with them a little bit? You know, I'm always stunned every time I go to a funeral, and you go to a funeral home. There's always, you know, in the corner there are people that are telling jokes. Just because they're trying to keep spirits up. So I don't know how much of this is related to that. Also, to your point about remorse, I know our colleague Phil Trexler, who will be here, he's in the green room right now eating donuts and drinking coffee. But it's always good when you come on this show later. When you know, Phil Trexler made the point that Kelley Williams-Bolar had told the Akron Beacon Journal that that she would do some things different, that she would still do this, she would still try to get her kids in school, but she would have done the paperwork. What we haven't heard from her is "I'm sorry." And I think that's a huge issue. It's going to be for the parole board. This is not an easy parole board to get through. You know, in some aspect, you can either look at this as the governor sent it to them because he's just going through the process, or he's looking for them to make a determination and kind of get him off the hook now that he stepped into this. And now that you're hearing these tapes, you're hearing a lot of stuff. This is becoming a much more polarizing story. And I think in hindsight, he's going to look back on that and say, you know, gee, I wish I'd stayed out of that.
Well, I think you're right, and my hope is that the parole board does look at it, not in terms of the emotions that have been raised about it, but in terms of the facts about the case and what in fact came down. What I will also say is with Reverend Sharpton coming to town next week to speak, I think next Thursday, if this issue raises the broader perspective about education equality, about looking at open enrollment, about looking at the way we educate our children, then it will have done what I think needs to have been done. But if it's an instance where Kelley Williams-Bolar and what she did is raised to the level of making a movie of it or making her a hero, that will offend me, because I don't think that's the main issue here. I think the issue here is that she had other options. She chose not to take those options. She could have enrolled her kids in a latchkey program in the Akron schools. She could have had her parents go to her house if she was so worried about their safety as they came home. And she could have had her parents pick them up from school and stay at that house. There were other options that she had, and I just don't like seeing her portrayed as a victim.
So the national media doesn't seem to want to let this go.
Well, no.
Why?
What is it? Good Morning America, and today I think we're supposed to be in here today, potentially interview. She's supposed to be on Nightline, from what we're told, on ABC. You know, look, this is a story that hits on a lot of different levels. I mean, and I've been critical of the early press coverage on it. It just seems like it seems like a lot of folks in the media haven't let the facts get in the way of a good sob story, and this is a good sob story. It's a mother with 2 children, and on the face of it, you know, when you dig down into it, then it's much more nuanced. But if you're looking at it from a shallow perspective, and I think that's the way the governor's looking at this,
and a lot of the news media,
and a lot of her supporters, I would say, you know, they're easily dismissive of breaking the law because they said it was, you know, done for a good, you know, for a good cause. And that this is a good discussion to have. This is on, you know, what are the values that we hold? What's more important? Is it the end run that the mother made around trying to get her kids to a different school, or is it how she did it? You know, what are the lessons you teach your kids? I think that's a central question.
While we still have a few minutes left of the broadcast portion of this conversation, waiting down the line is the state to make a recommendation on her current employment with the Akron schools, because she's now a convicted felon, and they'll likely just put it on the Akron schools too. It's up to you. What do they do out of this? Because it seems like they're damned if they do and damned if they don't.
Look, what they should do is follow their policy. What does the policy say?
Well, they really, I believe, look at case by case. Some felons have been allowed to stay on based on what the felony was. Others have not.
Then they should hold whatever personnel hearings are necessary to do that. I am not one of these people that thinks she should have a career death penalty. If the Akron School Board decided to retain her services, or, you know, even suspend her for a period for doing this, I would be okay with that. I don't think that she should be denied an opportunity to make a living on this. In my mind, this is a low-grade felony. It's a felony. It's serious business, but it's a low-grade felony. On that, I kind of agree with the governor. You know, felony can be a life-killing situation, but, you know, there is a bureaucracy, there is a process in place. The Akron School Board should follow the process and not just let her or their system get off with a free pass.
Well, and to expand on that a little bit, don't forget, Kelley Williams-Bolar is a student at the University of Akron.
Right.
She's working toward her education degree.
She says she is.
She says, well, exactly.
There's debate there.
Well, and I think that's something that I would hope that the Akron schools would also look into. Is she serious about education and working in the field of education? And in the same sense, I hope that Judge Cosgrove's indication that she would be sending a letter to the state to make sure that she is not, as Ed said, put in a career-ending sentence. You know, if she's serious about wanting to be an educator, if she does the schoolwork, then let's let her move on from that.
So much of this goes back to Kelley Williams-Bolar taking responsibility, admitting what she did was wrong, and
moving
again,
forward from that,
showing what people think is true remorse. And the whole point is, this is about rehabilitation. This is about admitting you did wrong and moving forward. And you can't move, I mean, this is a 12-step thing. You can't move forward until you admit you've done something wrong, that you've wronged other people. She hasn't done that yet. If she does that, I think this moves forward in a much more easier fashion for her and for the rest of the community.
And I want to talk about moving forward as we move this conversation now to newsnight.net.
For more NewsNight content, including extended discussions, full interviews, and the chance to speak your mind about the issues, join us online at newsnight.net.
Summit County Executive Russ Pry preparing for his State of the County address. Recently, he sat down with Jody to talk about such topics facing the county as consolidation.
The building department has consolidated with the city of Akron, I think Cuyahoga Falls. Health departments have consolidated. Explain how that helps residents and helps the bottom line, and if there are any more consolidations in the works.
Sure, and I mean, we're going to continue to look at consolidations that make sense in terms of how we provide services that are out there. With the building departments, there's one building code now allowed in the state of Ohio. And so now you end up with beginning to reduce the number of administrative costs associated with numerous building departments administering one set of codes. And so we looked in terms of saying, okay, this made sense to have one agency do it. And the merger between the city of Akron and Summit County is now being looked at across the state as a model by the State Building Standards Department is a very successful merger. Cuyahoga Falls, we were able last year to merge Cuyahoga Falls and the village of Silver Lake in. We're working with other communities right now about additional mergers. Those will eliminate chief building official officers, which lower the cost of business, and we're able to more wisely use people in those jobs. It didn't make a lot of sense to drive from Talmadge Avenue across the city of Akron to the city of New Franklin to even begin your workday in terms of inspection. So you're able to do a better flow of work.
Pry's address is coming up in 1 week. Ed will be back in just a moment, but right now glad to welcome Phil Trexler from the Akron Beacon-Journal to weigh in on the discussion. But first, though, Jody, you had a chance to sit down with Russ. What other issues did you talk about?
Well, we talked about, obviously, his coming into office at a time when the relationship was a little bit rocky between the county executive's office and county council and the county executive's office and maybe some of the other governmental leaders in the county. And how, in a very short period of time, Russ Pry has the kind of personality, I think, that he likes people. Let me put it that way. He likes people. He enjoys his job, and I think that comes through in everything he does. And he's been able to, I think, gain a tremendous measure of trust among a lot of people, not only in county council but throughout the county. I blogged about this last week, where I had a friend who said that shortly after Russ took office, he came and addressed the veterans. And the veterans had wanted a building for years. And Russ promised them a building, and my friend said, he delivered. And he delivered in a very short period of time. So Russ is the kind of person who I think does do a wonderful job in marshaling all of the resources his office has to help the entire area.
His persona, though, his demeanor, Phil, a little different than maybe the other lead politicians in Summit County?
Yeah, isn't he quite a contrast from the years of McCarthy? Yeah.
Sure.
And Tim Davis.
Right. I'm not sure. I'm sure Alex would not probably. Alex Archikoff would not agree with our assessment here of Pry's work. But there's been no scandals. It's been a solid leadership under very difficult circumstances. He's overseen, obviously a great drop in revenues and the crisis of layoffs and cutbacks and whatnot. So, it's been solid.
Well,
if not spectacular, but solid.
No, and I think his office has taken a great lead in terms of the economic development projects that are going on in the county, and we did talk about that in the interview, about how essential it was to make sure that Goodyear stayed in this area, and how the county and the Port Authority were able to marshal their forces, obviously, to get the funds to be able to have that happen. The Bridgestone Firestone headquarters, or Technical Research Center, how important that was. And he's looking forward, obviously, obviously, to the State of the County address next Friday, and he wants to talk about jobs because he understands, obviously, as all of us do, that we need to raise the revenue stream coming to the county, and that happens with jobs. And there's going to be some job creation types of initiatives, I think, that he's going to announce. But it was a very interesting conversation. I would encourage all of our viewers to go to the web to see the entire interview. I just really enjoyed sitting down and talking with him.
Yeah, well, another key decision that we talked about in previous weeks was actually made this week when it comes to the county, that the ruling came in that public officials who are elected in other entities can continue to work with the county without it being a big deal.
And that's good news for Summit County because there's so many of them. And that's one of the criticisms I think you have about the county government. It's not nepotism necessarily, although in some respects they've slid people in, but also there's a lot of partisanship there. An example of John Pota being, who lost his job through the Ohio Lottery Commission when Kasich came in. He's now coming into Donna Frio's office, and possibly the rumor has it that that's a prelude to him ultimately becoming the fiscal officer. But I think that's one of the criticisms that they have about the county government is all the Democrats that are working there. And it's certainly good news for Tina Merletti and the others who do the double duty of working for the county, but also, in her case, being an Akron City Council board member.
For John Pota, though, he'll now leave his seat, though, on county council.
Yeah, he's leaving county council, but he's coming into a job with Donna Frio's office after losing his other full-time job with the Lottery Commission.
Well, and I, as you said, the county prosecutor came down with a ruling this week that it was acceptable for partisan people to hold, who hold the public office, work in the public sector, and I guess I'm not sure I totally agree with that. I think that what we have seen, although it was not a charter government, Cuyahoga County, when a lot of the corruption and the scandals went on up there, I think that when you have a county government that is so top-heavy with just one party, it's rife for any kind of scandal and corruption. And I think that with this ruling, I would hope that Russ Pry takes an opportunity to look at what regulates this in the county, which is at the Human Resource Commission, and make sure that there's more clarification and maybe a little bit more transparency about how, in fact, they appoint people who hold partisan positions.
And I think that's one of the criticisms too: is how fair is it in these economic times? How fair is it to just hand a job over to somebody too? Are we posting a job? Are we looking for the best qualified candidate, or are we looking for the best qualified Democrat? And I think that the opposition would say you're looking to take care of your friends, right. And that's the criticism.
Russ isn't here really to defend it, but it's not unusual for people, even Sheriff Alexander, to hire the people that they know.
Absolutely.
People that they know.
Kasich did it,
and the governor.
Absolutely.
So it goes,
right.
I was just pointing out a different party here.
Right.
But among the other faces that are changing here in Summit County, while we still have time on the broadcast portion, Brenda Burnham Unruh, longtime judge, is going to step down. She's faced some health concerns, and Phil, I think she's one of the most respected judges, across Northeast Ohio.
Yeah, I've known her for well over 10 years. Prior to becoming a common pleas judge, she was a prosecutor, hard-nosed. I mean, if she's 5 foot tall, God bless her. I don't think she is.
90 pounds.
90 pounds. But my memory of her is she's just a shooting through the courthouse, always busy, always going somewhere. One of the hardest working judges that the county ever had. Brought a lot of compassion to the bench, but also she had that firmness, has that firmness of a prosecutor. I don't think it's any secret. She has cancer. She's fighting cancer. Been fighting cancer for over a year. Maintaining a strong spirit, and her friends are optimistic that she'll be able to pull through this. But unfortunately, she's had to miss a lot of time on the bench, and now she's taken a leave there, and in order to take care of herself and her family better. She's just a terrific judge, bright, charming, energetic, and everybody hopes that she'll be back on the bench soon.
Absolutely. I agree with everything Phil said. She's a wonderful person. Loved what she did. Absolutely no question that she was great at it. Understood the law. And yet her background being the family from the chapel, is very rooted in I don't want to say Christianity, but Christianity.
Sure.
And all we can hope is that by relieving her of this responsibility, she can focus her energies on getting better, because she needs to get better.
Yeah, a few more thoughts now as we move the remainder of this conversation to newsnight.net.
On newsnight.net, we cover a broader range of topics than we can on the air in 27 minutes. Be part of the conversation on our Facebook page and at newsnight.net.
Both of them back from the green room now. How's the food in the green room?
It was fabulous. There were crullers in there. Phil actually left apple stuffed crullers. I couldn't believe it.
Hopefully when we're done here, there's going to be something left over.
That's
Oh
right.
my God! See, I know I'm going to get some bad jokes to make the transition, but from donuts to cops.
Oh, jeez.
See, I knew I was going to just keep them coming now. Just teasing.
Send those cards and letters to Eric Mansfield.
Baker's dozen of applicants to be Akron's next police chief. None from inside. What can we extrapolate from any of that, Phil?
That there were just 13. We expected more. I don't know.
I don't know what.
I was surprised a few guys from Arizona and New Mexico want to come back to Akron.
Why is that? Do they have family ties back here?
Well, I think one of them does. One of them is from Akron. There's another guy that appears to be just like a carpetbagger. I think he's been only in New Mexico for less than a year, and he's already looking to get out of there. Yeah, there was nobody from Akron in there. The criticism is that the city crafted the job description to eliminate anyone currently in the department from being qualified technically to hold the position. I know that that's caused a lot of grief there. There are several captains within the department who feel as though they are more than qualified to take the position, and the mayor is intent, and he said so for more than 2 years now, that they've been without a full-time chief, that he wants to seek someone from outside the department. So they cast this net, and they caught 13, and some are appear more qualified than others. I know there was quite a buzz in the Akron Police Department. I tweeted that the other day, that when I was down there, it was obviously the hot topic, and people are very anxious. Two guys are coming out appear to be the front runners, appear to be most qualified. There's James Nice, who's heads an FBI undercover operation
From Akron.
From Akron. Kenmore grad, same as the mayor. University
And he was in
of
Detroit,
Akron.
right? Didn't he?
He did some time in L.A. He actually ran some gangs and
Okay.
gang unit out in L.A., which gives him some credibility. I think that Plasquelic likes the fact that someone would come from the federal government. He has sought out other federal employees to be chief. I know, talking to Pete Elliott, who heads up the U.S. Marshals, he's already turned down the job to be the next chief. But I think that's what Plasquelic is looking for, a federal agent who brings instant credibility to the department, as James Nice would. There's also a guy in Prince George's, Maryland, who is a major, I believe, of a huge force there, 1,600. But the interesting part there is that they have a county-wide department, 1,600 officers, and he certainly knows something about merged departments and operating a force county-wide, which is obviously something that Plasquelic is looking forward to. So those two guys, Morris and Nice, I think are the front runners at this point. And I'm basing that strictly on the scuttlebutt that we're hearing. Yeah.
Is it tough, though, to have a process like this, Ed, when the applications' names and resumes and everything go public before there's really even been an interview?
Well, it comes with the territory at this point. I mean, these are public documents, and they come in there, and if people are applying for this position, they know there's always the opportunity to do this. You don't want to see a story in the paper that says you were 13th out of 13 because you might be applying for something else. But it's the fact of life when people obviously are considered for school positions. You look at what's happening. Eugene Sanders leaves the Cleveland School District, and everyone knows he's really wants to be the president of Bowling Green. Right. So and those are public institutions. I do think it's interesting that you're seeing this dichotomy here, where the mayor clearly has a vision of where he wants to see the leadership of the police department to go, and it doesn't include his police department. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I don't say it as a criticism, but the mayor definitely has a vision of that. Perhaps many in the community, but certainly the rank and file in the police department, don't necessarily hold. I do think it raises some issues. One of the things that you should do as a good manager is you should plan your own obsolescence. You should look for your next replacement. And I think it's kind of telling that the chief law enforcement officer of the city, that's the mayor, doesn't have the confidence in the upper management of the police department to think that they can step up and do the job on a full-time
Yeah,
basis.
and imagine being those captains who are sitting there. You know, the department has 0 deputy chiefs right now.
Right.
And there are some captains there who've been there for 20 plus years who probably are qualified to do it. And there's several of them that we deal with on a daily basis nearly. And, you know, we talked about Sylvia Trundle, we talked Dan Zempelli, Beth Doherty, you know,
Ken Ball.
Right. You know, there's, you know, 4 captains there who are qualified. And what does that
And
say?
yet still young enough that they could be
Absolutely.
a chief for
And
10 years.
Absolutely. And what does that say to them? And what does that say to the rest of the rank and file? That you know, either you guys need some discipline over there.
There are
or
lieutenants and sergeants and right on down the line who've been denied opportunities for promotion, waiting on this process to play out for years.
Yeah,
Right.
over 2 years.
And that's really tough. 2 things stood out to me I want you guys to weigh on. One, Gary Moneypenny's name was not there.
Oh, the worst
The rumors
rumor.
for years, Gary Moneypenny, the Springfield chief, former Akron city councilman, that the mayor wanted him to be the police chief. Gary has told me from day one he would not apply. Now it's official.
Right.
Second, if they really went through with this process, then the rumors that they were going to try to forge or fold the department underneath a county-wide police chief under the sheriff's office clearly aren't going to happen either.
Oh, I disagree with the last part. The first part I agree
do
with
too.
is that Moneypenny, you know, he's there at the sheriff's department. It was tough for him, I think, to come from a small department into that big department at the sheriff's department. It would be equally tough for him to go over to the city. He's happy where he is, and people were just remarked on that rumor just because there's a great relationship there between Pasquale and Moneypenny. They like
And
each other.
Moneypenny's well thought of. We
Yeah,
only got a few seconds.
he's a good
though.
guy.
And you always hear Gary Moneypenny mentioned as a potential candidate for
Right.
sheriff at some point
Right.
when Drew Alexander's done with it. But you know, to your point, the
merger.
the second point about the merger, I don't think it means this at
No,
all.
it's alive
You know,
and well.
if anything, I think it means that the mayor wants to have his way and find something. He's going to need a partner as a police chief
Absolutely.
in order to make something like that work.
Yep. And I think it's going to happen.
Well, I do wish we had more time for that debate, but great topics this
See, we're
week.
not going to the net on this
You
one?
know, we're not. We got a few seconds left, but I'll thank both of you for being with me. Thank Jody as well, and hope everybody has a great week. Stay warm out there. We'll see you next Friday here as we talk about all of the great topics, and probably more on Kelley Williams-Bolar with Al Sharpton coming to town next Friday on NewsNite. Good night.